Well, good evening, IFL Nation, and welcome back to the lab, your weekly source for the rundown of all things IFL. Whether you are here for the recap of the week that was, the preview of the week that is to come, or curious about any of the other great goings on of this amazing league, you have come into the right place. It is about 6:30 p.m. here on the East Coast, a little bit delayed, but nonetheless, it is time for another edition of Wager Wednesday in the Indoor Football League. Thank you so much for tuning in, taking some time from your busy Friday evenings, as we do have a match in 90 minutes' time. So we're going to try to move through things here as swiftly yet as detailed as possible. So that is the goal for tonight's stream. For those of you who are new to the Indoor Football League or new to this channel in particular, I want to welcome you aboard with open arms. My name is Alex Schuberth. I am the lead IFL contributor for a sports forum site called Sports Coast to Coast, which is a Pacific Northwest-based sports forum site that specializes specifically in the coverage of the Indoor Football League and its 14-member teams. Each week, our staff will bring you up-to-date rosters, game previews, game times, game recaps when the indoor war is all said and done, and wide variety of other analysis, as well as breaking news developments over there as well. So if you call yourself a fan of the Indoor Football League, Sports Coast to Coast is a fantastic resource. Highly recommend checking it out. I've linked it below in the description. There you will also find the written version of my Wager Wednesday piece, which I put together and published out there this morning. So if you're maybe don't have a chance to catch the stream, maybe more want to read it for the sake of time, that's there for you as well. So with that being said, let's dive in here. Going to do a little bit of a different look today. See how this pans out. Goes to show the full slide, because I know sometimes that bottom right corner is obstructed by yours truly, but let's see how this goes. We are in week 14 of the 2026 season, which, as mentioned before, is set to kick off in about an hour and a half worth of time. So tonight, we will power through our recap of week 13, which featured 6 games. We had 2 overtime games in that stretch. The biggest upset in the IFL this season, looking strictly at the lens of moneyline payout, and we nearly had the biggest upset in IFL history, at least from recent memory and metrics. So we will briefly recap each of those 6 games and highlight the major plays that went down there. We'll factor those into our population of results so far from the prior 12 weeks of the season up to this point. We'll talk about our individual betting record. We'll talk about the over-under spread and moneyline trends of teams specifically. We will isolate what is hot and what is not, so that we could educate ourselves better to act accordingly on some opportunities coming up this week. Once we do all of that, we'll dive into week 14. We'll start with our Friday game, move on to the 4 Saturdays, and the 2 Sunday games. It is a full slate, all 14 teams in action, true to week 14's name. That's what we get, the full slate of 7 games, all 14 teams in action. We will dive into our single game picks, and then we'll try to keep our parlay stretch going here. It's been a great run for the past month plus, and got some few winners to talk about once we get to that point as well. So without much delay here, let's get into week 13. We started it off on Saturday afternoon. The Iowa Barnstormers traveling to Orlando to play the Pirates. Both teams in search of a win. In the case of Iowa, to try to salvage what's left of another lost season. And in the case of the Pirates, trying to maintain their spot at 3rd place in the Eastern Conference. And for how rough of a season it has been for the Pirates defense specifically, they went out and put together the best defensive performance that any team has put up so far this season. Now you can say, granted, it was at home, it was against the Barnstormers, but it doesn't really matter what level of indoor football that you're playing at. to only give up 7 points is amazing. That is a noteworthy effort in and of itself. In fact, it ties a Pirates franchise record for fewest points allowed in a single game, which they had set back in 2018 when they were members of the National Arena League. So that was the pillar that built up the successful night for the Orlando Pirates. The offense rolled in the first half. Paxton DeLaurent only asked to play one half of football, completed all 8 of his passes, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Backup signal caller James Blackman took the reins from there, engineered a couple more touchdown drives, and before you knew it, Orlando had established themselves a 50-7 win over the Iowa Barnstormers. That improves Orlando's record to 6-4, whereas Iowa tumbles to a record of 1-9. We had another game in the Sunshine State not too long after the Pirates one kicked off, but the Jacksonville Sharks at home against the San Antonio Gunslingers, going up against a tough Eastern opponent on the road for a second consecutive week. For the Gunslingers, this one played out very similarly to how Green Bay panned out the week prior. They got a reasonably strong start, touchdowns on their first 2 drives, and they also got a fumble recovery in the end zone to actually lead the game off. So the first 15, 18 minutes of the game actually favored San Antonio, much to our kind of sweat nature with the -900 money line pick there. But don't worry if you had the Jacksonville Sharks in any capacity, because once we got to halftime, when the Sharks were up by 2, it was all Jacksonville from that point on. In fact, the Gunslingers didn't even put up as much as a single point the rest of the way home. Jacksonville closing out that game on the heels of that impressive defensive form. They outscore San Antonio 32-0 in the second half, en route to their 8th consecutive victory. This one coming by a final score of 54-20. So the Sharks improved to 9-1. Whether or not they assume first place in the Eastern Conference depended on the Green Bay Quad City matchup a little bit later in the evening, which we'll get to that result in just a little bit. San Antonio, meanwhile, I believe it's 4 straight losses for them now, and they drop to 3-7. So dire straits out in Alamo Town. Our next game on the list here, the Tulsa Oilers going to Fishers to take on the Freight, a team that Tulsa had actually never defeated prior to Saturday's action. In fact, the Freight taking the first 3 of the season series, but it was the Oilers in this one, capitalizing on some opportunities, especially in the second half. Late in that first half, they were up by, I believe it was 7 points or 8 points, somewhere along those lines. They get an interception. Davis Black, surprise starter, throws it right into the breadbasket of Trey Harvey. He returns it deep into Freight territory. The Oilers get a touchdown to build their lead to as large as 15 points. But Fishers, they weren't rolling over quietly. No, in fact, they actually get, I believe it was 3 or 4 defensive stands in a row, spanning the end of the second quarter, well into the fourth quarter. Felix Harper reassuming command of the starting quarterback spot throughout the second half leads Fishers to a lead by as many as 8 points. Now, if you're the Freight, you were in this situation before in the previous game at Jacksonville. You have the lead and the ball late in the fourth quarter. All you got to do is score, and that pretty much puts the game out of reach. But unfortunately for Fishers, an empty possession on a missed field goal gives the Oilers new life. They end up scoring a touchdown with 30 seconds to go. They initially convert on a trick play on the 2-point conversion, but that was called back by an offensive pass interference. It didn't matter. They end up connecting anyways on a 13-yard play. TJ Edwards to Jermernick Smith to tie the game. Another game-winning field goal attempt by Sutherland misses again. Game goes into overtime. The Freight get a touchdown +1 on their possession. The Oilers get a touchdown on their possession of overtime. They go for 2. Another trick play, this one going on an end around to Mike Harrigan, who jogs in untouched, to complete a hat trick for him, 3 touchdowns. The week after he got Special Teams Player of the Week, he comes up with the clutch plays offensively to help lead the Oilers to a 45-44 overtime win against the Fishers Freight. So absolutely rough one if you had Fishers in any capacity. Arguably rougher for anybody who had the under at 87.5. Game goes into overtime, and the only thing that got the over in this one was that extra frame and the 2-point conversion to top it off. Saturday's final game saw the Green Bay Blizzard head to Quad City to face off against the Steam Wheelers. This game was very, very interesting the first go around in Moline, and was no different in this one. The Blizzard having a bit of trouble offensively to start the game, and in fact, Liam Thompson ends up getting injured, appeared to have suffered some sort of leg injury in the second quarter, kept him out of the game for a couple of series, though he did make his return, and Green Bay ended up reassuming command of the lead. That second half was all about that exchange of the lead from one side to the other. Quad City would get a touchdown, Green Bay would respond, Quad City would follow. Eventually, came down to a drive inside the 1-minute warning, Quad City needing a touchdown, wielding a unique weapon in former Green Bay Blizzard receiver Jazarick Peterson, who rushes in a 2-yard touchdown to take the lead for Quad City. They get another deuce to increase their lead, and Green Bay, after a few shots in the end zone, couldn't connect on either. And for the Steam Wheelers, it is another season-saving victory at the hands of the Green Bay Blizzard, the plus 600 underdogs entering this game, defeating Green Bay for a big win, 43-37 the final there. The Steam Wheelers obviously covering that spread at plus 13.5. We had some action on Sunday's pair of games as well, starting out in the desert in southern Arizona, with New Mexico taking on the Tucson Sugar Skulls. Now, this game, very, very fascinating. Both defenses and both offenses had their fair share of moments. We had some special teams action right off the bat with, I believe it was Aaron Jackson returning the opening kickoff for a touchdown. But the Chupacabra offense, once again, you take them out of Land Enchanted and something just doesn't click. The Chupacabra is only getting 7 points in that first half. Tucson taking a 23-7 lead midway through. Got a little bit more scoring action in the third quarter, which included a defensive touchdown from Tucson with Rafiq Abdul-Wahid picking up a fumble or an interception, or however you want to call that, bobbled by Donovan Portery. Houses it. Tucson builds up their lead, and from a win-loss outcome standpoint, it was pretty much elementary from that point onwards. Fascinatingly enough, the game ending on a pair of safeties as the Sugar Skulls defend home turf. They get the win. It pushes them to 4th place in the Western Conference, so provisional playoff spot. Their win over New Mexico comes by a final score of 48-22, which left us 5 points short of that over that we had wagered on. Last but not least, the most shocking game of the week, the Vegas Nighthawks traveling to Northern Arizona to play the Wranglers. And holy cow, the Wranglers, they've had some tough games. You could tell, because the first 30, 45 minutes of this game, it looked like they were built for this moment in a classic iron sharpens iron scenario. In fact, the Wranglers were either tied or held the lead throughout the entirety of the first half. And after an early interception in the third quarter and a touchdown that followed, the Wranglers had a double-digit lead against a team that you could make an easy argument as class of the IFL. Unfortunately for Northern Arizona, there was just one too many mistakes made throughout that last 20, 25-minute stretch. One empty possession here, another empty possession there, and next thing you knew, the Nighthawks had assumed the lead for the first time in the game with it was in the early stages of the fourth quarter. Eventually, later down the line, Vegas is up by 1, 57-56. They're out of timeouts. Northern Arizona has a third down opportunity to maybe just run out the clock and send Manny Higuera out for a field goal attempt to win. They end up getting a touchdown plus a 2-point conversion. That gave the ball back to the Vegas Nighthawks, which, surprise, big mistake. The Nighthawks respond with a quick touchdown drive. They tie the game with the extra point. Field goal attempt from Manny Higuera to win the game for the Wranglers goes wide. We hit overtime again. Vegas with the touchdown +1. Northern Arizona punching back with a nice touchdown reception by Marlon Cook. The 2-point conversion, though, was no good. It glanced off the hands of the receiver, tipped by acting defensive back Quentin Randolph, who had to enter the game as defensive back in the wake of an injury to Joe Fouché. But however you get it done, they get it done. And the Nighthawks do exactly that. They win their 9th straight game. 71-70 is the final of that overtime contest. It is now the highest scoring game in the IFL this season with 141 points. That usurps the 139 that Green Bay and Orlando put up on April 24th. So that was the path that our bets took for the week. We started 3-1 on Saturday, which was awesome, but true to form, the Sunday scaries got the best of us. We dropped by 2 results from the final day of the week, so we wind up with an even record overall. That keeps us 1 game shy of 500 for the season as a whole. Our over-under betting not getting much better, unfortunately, although we have cashed on a couple of underdog spread bets recently. So we are turning a little bit of a corner there. I'd love to see those get a little bit more evenly balanced out as the season draws near to its conclusion here. But yeah, anything that we can do to try to reverse some of that net loss that you see there. It's around that 6-unit, 7-unit neighborhood. We've had so many losses come down right down to the wire. But the other side of the coin, you could say that we've gotten through the worst of such luck this season. So we keep battling through, identifying those neat, interesting trends. I think we'll be A-okay. But again, we're going to need a strong run to try to reverse some of those convincingly red numbers, which you never really want to see. Here is our parlay attempt from last week, and we got our 3rd winner in 5 weeks. We haven't gotten the back-to-back, but we have nailed the every other week cadence at this point in time. Our pick of the Sharks covering at home, we returned to the well for that one, and it paid off. Tucson beating New Mexico at home, again backing a home team to take care of business. They do so as -218 underdogs. And that Vegas Northern Arizona game with the over-under set at 86.5, that cashes with a full quarter and some pocket change left. And that got us to a win of +431. So $10 wager turns into $53.16. So congratulations to anybody who happened to tail that. So we suddenly have 3 winners. We are 1 shy from our preseason goal of 4. And the way that we're going right now, it stands to reason that we have a very solid shot of exceeding that. Which if we do, our parlay record, unlike last year, may wind up convincingly in the positive if the breaks continue to go our way. Funnily enough, that was not the only parlay of the week that I was involved in to hit, as we also nailed the 2nd terrific triumvirate of the season. That's right. I've partnered along with Trey from Off the Wall and Cody from In the Alley. Each week since about week 5 or 6, we've each put in a leg and seen if we can come out a winner. We nailed on our first ever attempt, and it took a little bit of a while to get the second attempt to go through, but we do see one go green, +581 there. The combination bets of week 13 were super, super kind to us. The double parlay win will stand as one of the better results in recent Wager Wednesday memory. So good beats all around. hopefully those good beats will help turn the tide on our single game year-to-date results. It's been a little bit of a rough stretch since that week 6 to 8 threshold there. A few down weeks have seen our record tumble pretty considerably here, at below 6 units for each of the flat and the weighted methods, with only 7 weeks left at this point in the season to try to make a steep climb upwards. So that's my goal. 2024 was kind of a similar scenario to this, where we needed a hot run to end the season, and that's precisely what we ended up predicting ourselves into. So does history repeat itself in the year of our Lord 2026? All right, our yearly results by bet are right here. Nothing too out of the ordinary to report that we haven't already spent some time discussing already. Home teams remain particularly strong, curiously slightly stronger on the spread than they are outright. The favorites have also won at a near 73% clip. That is well above the previous 3-year average of around 66%. So could we expect more underdogs to make a bit of a run for it and try to bring some quick regression to the mean there? That is one of the many interesting questions that we're going to have to answer. With the overs slightly outperforming the unders at this point in time, although I should note, last week was 4-2 to the under. So the first time since week 9 where we have had more unders cash in games than we've had overs. The big trends to follow as we move forward here remain on the home team front. They have won 11 of the past 16 outright. They have covered in 13 games in that 16-game stretch. So absolutely blazing if you've been betting on the hosts in any way, shape, or form. Even when the home team has been the underdog, that has been an absolute goldmine for those who have backed predictions when that situation has arisen. We're talking about 26 games, 19-7 ATS for a 73% cover rate. And while the straight up record is below 500 at 11-15, you would be looking at a near 40% return on investment, which at this point equates to a plus 10 unit difference if you had selected every underdog on the money line up to this point in the season. So anytime that those scenarios come up, we always kind of have to address that question. Whether our picks go that way or not depends a little bit on a matchup by matchup basis, but it is a significant trend that is there if you were one of the people that like to hone in on one particular trend to potentially capitalize on. This one is just about as good as any that we've seen this year. All right, our notable team-by-team trends so far. We finally had Vegas fail to cover a spread in their near upset at the hands of Northern Arizona a week ago. That stopped a streak of 8 consecutive ATS wins for the Nighthawks, as a matter of fact. So they are 8-2 on the spread at this point in the season. Tulsa in second place, not too far behind at a 7-3 record, with their 3 straight wins outright, also coinciding with 3 consecutive covers. On the flip side of things, San Antonio has failed to cover in each of their last 5 games. They do get an opportunity with their matchup this week to try to flip that script, but we will discuss that game when we get closer to it. Iowa, also another team, perhaps unsurprisingly, lagging behind in the ATS department with a record of 3-7 and having failed to cover their spread in 3 of the last 4. On the over-under front, we have a new leader in that department with the San Diego Strike Force, who were idle this week on a 7-2 over-under streak so far this season. Vegas and Orlando each at 7-3, with the Pirates games having gone under 3 consecutive times following their 7-0 over start. So we had talked about it a little bit, that possible regression to the mean forthcoming on that front. And lo and behold, we've seen it settle in here a little bit. So we're going to have to see if that under streak continues or if we do finally get a game where the over hits for the Pirates. So those are some of the more vivid examples of what we've seen so far this season. Now, looking from a recent lens, and this is something that I wish that I had done a little bit earlier in the season, but better late than never to present some of the hottest streaks that are ongoing right now in the IFL as far as the spread and the total. We've got the Sugar Skulls and the Tulsa Oilers who are on 3-game cover streaks. The Gunslingers, as we mentioned before, have lost 5 straight games, but the big one that I saw this week that absolutely floored me, and perhaps it shouldn't have floored me as much as it did, but the Tucson Sugar Skulls, 7 straight games to the under. Meanwhile, the Wranglers and the Strike Force have each had 4 consecutive games go over. And wouldn't you know it, those two teams play each other this week. So, an opportunity for that streak to continue with the outcome of a single game. That Pirates 3-0 under streak contrasts nicely with Tulsa's 3-game over streak, as those two teams will also do battle. So we'll be assured that at least one of those streaks continues into next week. Our yearly bet results by team are here. This is what we look to in terms of evaluating our 7-win per team goal. Fortunately for us, we were able to push through 3 more of those teams across that finish line, if you want to call it that, with our picks winding up correct for both Green Bay, Orlando, as well as Quad City. So we had already gotten San Antonio and Arizona to that point. But as you can see there, we've got quite a bit of work to do on basically half of the rest of the league. And in the case of the Fisher's Freight, a team whom we have a 3-8 record on so far this season, we actually need to win 4 of our final 5 bets on their games just to meet the goal. So that's a team where we've really got to lock in because time is quickly running out. Again, the goal for everybody is 7. I'm confident that we can get there, even if it means we have to cheese a money line favorite or 2 somewhere along the way. All right, it is disclaimer time now. The lines and odds that we're going to be using today are going to come from DraftKings Sportsbook. Took a little bit for the lines for this week to come up. I believe they did so during the Canada versus Bosnia and Herzegovina game for the FIFA World Cups too. So shout out to that tournament going on. But in any event, we do have DraftKings lines. So that is what we are going to use, as has been the case for pretty much this entire series history dating back to 2023. This is a series purely rooted in entertainment, curiosity, and fun. It is not meant to be a gambling tool or something by which to make money. After all, like we've seen, there's no such thing as a guarantee or a lock in the sports wagering world. Those who tell you otherwise might be a little bit delusional. If you are going to place some bets, please do so legally and responsibly. You must be 21 years of age or older to play in most jurisdictions. If you would like to tail my bets or fade my bets, if you might not necessarily believe in me, which that's fine too. But if you want to test the waters, please practice safe gaming habits. That includes setting a budget in terms of both time and money. Risk only what you can afford to lose. And if you feel like you or a loved one is having a potential issue with problem gaming, there are a lot of resources available to provide assistance. Responsibleplay.org is one example. Haveagameplan.org is another. Each individual state has their own resources as well, all of which is set up to help debunk gambling myths, provide other education, and refer you to any resources that you feel like you need to help get across to the other side when all is said and done. So if you feel like addiction is settling in, know that you are not alone and that help is out there. With that being said, we got through our recap piece in a little over half an hour here. So we will delay no further. We'll pull up our big board and we will get cracking on our picks for the week. So in about an hour's time, 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific, we get the top 2 teams in the Eastern Conference doing battle at the Resch Center. The Blizzard are the hosts in this one, so they are laying 1.5 points The over-under is set at 92.5. On the money line, Jacksonville is at even money, and Green Bay is minus 120. I don't think I need to provide any introduction on this one because the body of work that both of these teams have put in so far this season truly speak for themselves. And I would be confident in saying that these have been the top two teams in the IFL in terms of adjusting to each week's ebbs and flows. It just seems like, regardless of who is in or out of the lineup, both of these teams have stayed exceedingly hot and have looked like very much a contender to take home league hardware in mid-August. Let's talk a little bit about the Jacksonville Sharks first. Their offense is spearheaded by James Cahoon and Jimmy Robinson, who have formed a beautiful throwing and rushing tandem together. Receiving core that features Marquell Wade, Red Douglas, Bryce Bowens, Jaden Stoshak. You've got a bunch of guys there that can rotate in and out. You can create a whole bunch of nightmarish matchups. And that's exactly what the Jacksonville Sharks have done. They are one of two teams in the IFL that are averaging over 50 points per 10 possessions, with Vegas being the other. And defensively, they hold an incredible advantage over most opponents as well. They are actually leading the IFL in points per game allowed. I believe the number was 36.7 that I saw on the league standings page. They are also third in the IFL in defensive scoring efficiency. So you think along that side of the ball, you've got guys like Chris Rice, Michael Moore, Dylan Brown, Clay Fields is having an outstanding year. This Jacksonville Sharks team, I suspected in the preseason that they were going to be really, really good, but I think they've even crushed those expectations so far. So it's going to be a very fascinating game to see if they can withhold Green Bay in Titletown. The Blizzard coming off of a rough loss against Quad City. In fact, the Steamwheelers are the only team that have been able to defeat the Blizzard this season. They have done so twice. So Green Bay is 9-2. They are a half game behind Jacksonville for that number one spot in the East. They're probably a shoe-in for at least the top two at this point, barring any surprising run from one of Orlando, Tulsa, or Fishers. But yeah, Green Bay's got an equally impressive situation, especially on offense with Liam Thompson, who has taken home multiple Offensive Player of the Week awards. We're going to have to see how he is in terms of the injury front, because he did miss some time in last week's loss against Quad City, and he's got one fewer day than usual to heal up for this one. So it's going to be very interesting. I'd fully expect Thompson to start and be okay, but it is going to be something to monitor as this game progresses. Kyrie Robinson has filled in at running back and has had some outstanding games, including a 5-touchdown performance against the San Antonio Gunslingers. While the receiving core of Trayvon Alexander, Drayshawn Hudson, and Isaac Ross have been outstanding all season long as well. Defensively, you're looking at about a top 4, top 5 unit in the league. You've got guys like Sean Mustin, Tavon Grant, Frankie West Jr., and that defense, I believe they were either 4th or 5th in defensive efficiency, maybe a point behind Jacksonville. But case in point here is this is a very, very equal matchup, in my opinion. One of the most evenly matched tilts that we're going to get for the remainder of this regular season. My pick for this one, as much of heresy as it is, I'm rolling the dice on the even money payout of the Jacksonville Sharks. Now, if you are betting with Bet365, you are getting this number at a much more advantageous payout potential. I believe when they opened there, the Sharks were plus 122 on the money line. But in accordance with our rules, we're going to be consistent with DraftKings odds for final bet evaluations. So as much as I want to kind of go with the plus 122, I'm going to stick to our roots here. We're going with even money. I pretty much told myself throughout the week that if one of these teams were to open at plus money, that's the side that I was going to go with. Really boils down to a 50-50 coin toss to me. So why not take the better payout potential of the two? We've gotten some very good results on underdog bets on the money line so far this season. A 4-3 record in a bet type that has only converted about 27-28% of the time this season. So I've got confidence in this one. It goes against the grain of my Blizzard at home argument that I always seem to make. But sometimes that's what betting is. Sometimes you just have to fade yourself. Shout out to Trey, my man at Off the Wall, for that piece of advice. But that's how we're going to start off this week. Jacksonville logging, if you want to call it an upset, we'll call it an upset. But at the very least, we'll see if they can get a strong road win to further establish their advantage in the East. In tomorrow's slate, we begin with a 5 o'clock game, which I will have the recap for on Sports to Coast. Our Gunslingers aficionado, my man Chase, will be occupied with the NBA Finals, so yours truly will run the show for the bout at Freeman Coliseum. But here we have the Gunslingers at home. They are favored by 7.5 over the New Mexico Chupacabras. The over-under is 67.5. That is 4 points lower than the previous all-time low for an indoor football league game. So this is history in the making right in front of our very eyes here. On the money line, New Mexico is plus 250, San Antonio minus 310. Now, the fascinating thing about this game, as rough as the season has been for both of these teams, they're both still very much alive in the playoff hunt. They have, I believe, 6 games apiece to go. And in the case of the Chupacabras, they're 3 games away from Tucson for that 4th and final playoff spot, which they're going to have to leapfrog the Sugar Skulls as well due to the tiebreaker. The Gunslingers are 1 game back of Tucson for 4th, and the Gunslingers will have the advantage over the Sugar Skulls if a tiebreaker is necessary at the end of the season. So very, very big game for both teams. 2 squads where the story has been lack of offense. In the case of the Chupacabras, offense has been perfectly fine when they've played in New Mexico. I think they've put up results of like 38, 40, 47, 45. But once you take them out of New Mexico, that offense has simply sputtered, averaging about 20, 21 points on a per game basis. We're going to have to see what kind of decisions they make at quarterback. Donovan Porterie has started the last few for the Chupacabras. They also made a trade with Vegas for Avon Rucker. They reportedly also have another quarterback coming in from the University of Kentucky that might make a case for starting for that starting position. So that signal caller spot remains a little bit in flux since the trade of Jerome Johnson. So we're going to have to see how that impacts things on the Chupacabras end. Defensively, they did lose Maurice Jackson. He ended up signing with the Vegas Nighthawks, so one of their more impressive defensive linemen is no longer with the team. Holding down the fort defensively, you have guys like Greg Dent and Gleason Spreewell, who have enjoyed some pretty solid individual campaigns, but it's only going to get trickier for the Chupacabras to try to log some wins here, especially in a road environment. Now, the Gunslingers, they have some issues to address as well. Reportedly, Fred Payton Jr. is no longer on the roster. He did get banged up in the game against Jacksonville last week, so not sure if that has anything to do with it. So for the moment, as far as the players that we know are on the team, Joaquin Collazo walks right back into that starting quarterback role. And he's had his moments overall, but still has yet to lead a Gunslinger offensive output of 40-plus points. That's going to be the goal that the Gunslingers are going to try to look for in this game. It is a very attackable matchup against a Chupacabra defense that is 13th in the IFL in defensive scoring efficiency. So for San Antonio, the opportunity is there to really establish some momentum on offense to try to make that late season push for a playoff spot. My pick for this game. Oh boy. I'm not in love with either of these, with really any of these selections, but I feel like we should go with the wager that has cashed 68% of the time so far this season, and that is home team on the spread with San Antonio at minus 7.5. I know I'm going completely head on with the Gunslingers 0-5 ATS losing streak that they're on right now. In the same breath, though, the Chupacabras have covered just once in their I believe it's 5 or 6 away games this season. And very often they have really struggled just to get into the mid-20s of those games. And now potentially facing the prospect of a brand new quarterback. This is a complete get-right game for San Antonio's defense, who's once upon a time, they were the number one team in the IFL in scoring defense. That was before they ended up giving up, I think it was 62 to Green Bay and then 54 to Jacksonville. So hardly encouraging results there, but certainly understandable that those were the outputs given, especially with those two teams in elite form as they have been all season long. We've seen enough of these streaks to know that they're going to come to an end eventually. This might be the best opportunity for San Antonio to really come through with a convincing win. Of their 3 so far this season, 2 of them have beaten this number, 17 against Tucson and 18 against the Northern Arizona Wranglers. So let's see if the numbers back up our prediction here. It's a well-established enough trend. We're more than halfway through the season. Let's see how it goes. Gunslingers at minus 7.5. Game number 2 of Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern, the Quad City Steamwheelers facing off against the Iowa Barnstormers. This is their second matchup in Day 1 this season. The Barnstormers are at home as double-digit underdogs, getting 11.5 from the bookies. The over-under is 82.5. The money line is giving us Quad City at minus 600 and Iowa at plus 440, which, if you believe in history repeating itself, at plus 440 might be a little bit something to look at. But we'll discuss Quad City first here as the visiting team. Like we mentioned, their season's right back on track. They are 4-7 right now. They are a game and a half out of a playoff spot, but I think they know if they take this result here, they get to 5-7. They've got some home games left. They might be able to sneak in to that playoff spot to make it 5 years in a row of postseason football in Moline. But yeah, they are driven offensively by Daquan Neal, who has started the whole way through at quarterback. Keon Williams having another outstanding year. Kevon Rudd in that same boat as well, with the veteran having come up with some of his finest games of his career, it seems, in this season. Defensively, while the numbers haven't looked particularly great, at least compared to last season, they've still got some great players lined up there. Clay Harrell, Nick Harris, Keyshawn Moore. The moral of the story here is you don't want to catch Quad City on a bad night. Even though they've had their struggles, we know they still have that ceiling. And that is the ceiling that fans out in the Quad Cities are hoping elevates the Steamwheelers to that possible playoff berth. In the case of the Iowa Barnstormers, looking at a 1-9 record so far, like I said, they're going to try for repeat history. Their lone win coming against Quad City 35-25 in this building. I believe that was back in week 8. The first question that Iowa has to answer, though, what are they going to do at quarterback? We've seen a bunch of different iterations this year where one guy has looked strong and then they flopped the following week. So they've gone through Harry Rubidoux, Ivan Corbin, Dante Avila Santos, Clifton McDowell. They go back to Dante Avila Santos. Now there's some very real steam of former Wrangler Kobe Gatson potentially making the start here for the Barnstormers. So if that's the case, That is now 5 different quarterbacks starting under center for the Barnstormers in the 2026 season. So trying to find that continuity on offense. One that does feature David Elder, who's had a respectable season since joining Iowa, along with receivers like Curtis Ravenel and Donald McKinney and DeMonte Martin, each of whom have had their moments as well. The defense, it struggled, and judging from the injuries that they've suffered, it may not get better anytime soon. The big omission from the roster moving forward being Tyler Tate, who was put on the season IR list a couple weeks ago, I believe it was. So it's going to be up to guys like Richie Coffey and John Adams to elevate their games and hope that that also resonates with the other 8 guys lining up for the Barnstormer defense. So let's talk pick about this game. It's another one where I was kind of on both ends of it, but in the end, I'm going to go with the over here at 82.5. This could be shooting myself in the foot given Iowa's uncertainty at the quarterback position, but there is this argument as well. With Quad City going up against a defense that's giving up over 50 points per 10 possessions, easily the worst in the league, I stand to reason that a 50-point floor should be Quad City's standard here, which if they make that, we're just looking for Iowa to pick up the last of the table scraps, which we have seen so many times throughout the past 3-4 year span where it becomes almost juvenile to kind of go on the other side and bet the under in a scenario like this. The other big thing too, kind of guiding this bet a little bit, is that Iowa's form on offense at home has been considerably better than that on the road. They have put up efforts of 48 points in this building. They've also put up 39, 35. So once they get back to friendly confines, they have proven that they can come up with some sort of flow. The ultimate question, as we mentioned up top, is going to be, whoever is the quarterback, do you have a game plan tailored so that you're setting that guy up in the best possible position to go out and put together a competitive game? So that's going to be the question. I feel like the over is the play here, with Quad City doing the majority of the lift to take advantage of a positive matchup here, something that they did not do in their 35-25 loss earlier in the season. All right, we actually have our second 8:00 p.m. game on Saturday here. It is the Orlando Pirates and the Tulsa Oilers. At home, the Oilers are favored by 8.5. The over-under is 90.5. On the money line, Orlando is plus 295 and Tulsa is minus 375. What a battle this is going to be, if recent history is any indication. Because believe it or not, the past 2 matchups between these teams, 60 minutes has not been enough. We've had 2 consecutive Pirates-Oilers games go into overtime. Tulsa winning the one from 2025 at home to save their season with a double overtime win, whereas the Pirates stealing revenge in their barn with their Week 5 61-55 come from behind victory. The Pirates come into this game at 6-4, good for a third in the conference, after having dispatched of Iowa last week. So a lot of their guys are going to be pretty fresh in this game, at least as fresh as they can be. With Paxton DeLaurent leading the way at the quarterback spot, along with playmakers around him like Puka Williams, Thomas Owens, Tio Redding. We're going to have to see about the availability of Nyquan Murray. He's missed each of the last 2 games due to injury as one of Orlando's top receivers this season. And on the defensive side, we saw some impressive stuff from their newly constructed defensive line last week. Guys like Deontay Anderson and Devontae O'Malley, in particular, having outstanding efforts, along with Jay Person at the linebacker spot, and Leon O'Neal, who won the defensive rookie or defensive player of the week honors. So plenty of talent on that Orlando side of the defense. We're going to have to see if they have the right pieces coming together in this late season push here. Tough draw for that unit against an Oiler side that has just been firing all season long. TJ Edwards on offense is looking more and more like that 2023 IFL MVP in terms of that explosive passing and rushing ability. The load has been taken off him quite considerably with the addition of Caleb Ramseur at the running back position, providing even more balance and unpredictability to that Oilers attack. Guys like Jermaine Smith and Spencer Tears and Mike Kerrigan. Plenty of playmakers out on that Tulsa offense. They've cracked 50 on, I believe, half of their games this season. So that ceiling pretty much limitless for the Oiler offense, especially considering they got 55 in the first meeting against Orlando, which unfortunately for the Oilers, they happen to be on the wrong side of defeat in that game. But they're going to be hoping for a supercharged effort from their defense with guys like Sedarius Doss, Ulrich Jones, and Trey Harvey proving to be pillars for that Oiler defense once again. So going to be a very, very fascinating game out in Oklahoma. And it is this game where my mortal Mega Max of the week is going to fall. And forgive me if I'm being a little bit too predictable on this one, but the Pirates on the road are an automatic fade. I'm going with the Oilers minus 8.5 for the maximum bet of the week. This just boils down to Orlando's just not the same in games on the road. Amongst their games outside of Orlando this season, a 28-point loss to Jacksonville, a 40-point loss to Vegas, and a 16-point loss to Tucson, where they were actually the favorite by 8.5. So, for whatever reason, that franchise, since they've joined the IFL, or really since the 2022 or 2023 season, it's just been rough. Whenever they've had to be the visiting team, and against a Tulsa team that is second best in the IFL at 7-3 overall against the spread this season, this number makes a lot of sense. And again, it's a situation. Bet365 had this at minus 3.5, which I was really hoping for something close to that for this one, but we're going to go with the minus 8.5 here, and we're going to stick with it. Definitely more of a play that's more of a lean than kind of a more statistically driven one, because Orlando plus 8.5 does admittedly give a little bit of value and a little bit of wiggle room. But in the same breath, come on, we're talking about the Pirates. They don't cover on the road. Let's see if the Oilers are true to their name as one of the biggest respecters of the coin this season. All right. Wrapping up Saturday is a 10 o'clock game. The Tucson Sugar Skulls doing battle with the Vegas Nighthawks for the second time this season. Vegas returns home following that super scary Sunday night game for them. They're right back on the saddle as 24.5-point favorites. The over-under is 88.5. On the money line, Tucson is plus 1,500 and Vegas is minus 3,600. Interesting thing about this game is it is actually going to be Jerome Johnson's second go-around at the Stronghold this season, with the Tucson quarterback already having played here in a matchup against the Nighthawks when he was the signal caller for the New Mexico Chupacabras. Unfortunately for Johnson, that game did not go anywhere near well, as Vegas cruised their way to a 48-12 victory. So for the 2024 League MVP, this matchup is all about redemption with a brand new supporting cast that he has helped kindle to the tune of 101 points in Tucson's last two games, both of which have been victories. Now, granted, 3 of Tucson's 4 wins have been against the New Mexico Chupacabras, so you can make the take the grain with a little bit of salt argument if you want, but that's where the Sugar Skulls kind of stand right now on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, they actually carry a little bit of sneaky appeal. They're actually top 5 in the league, if you could believe it, in terms of defensive efficiency. Again, a lot of those matchups against New Mexico maybe skewing that a little bit, but we've seen the Skulls defense on the right side of some scoop and scores, some pick sixes, some kickoff returns for touchdowns. So they definitely have that capability, that side of the ball, to go and influence a game. And in every shred of likelihood, they are going to need that against a Vegas team that we have to figure is going to get right back to their roots of dominant football, particularly on defense. Like Mike Davis sees a 70-point outing. I have a hard time believing that this game doesn't see the Nighthawks surrender half of that at most. Like a 35-point floor for the defensive performance, if that makes any shred of sense. But yeah, the offense has scored 57 a game. Jaden DeLora having another MVP caliber season. Josh Tomas maybe a front runner for offensive player of the year when everything is said and done. Quentin Randolph in that conversation as well. Deshaun Stoudemire emerging as a perfect complement at the number 2 wide receiver spot. Defensively, as we said, they got Maurice Jackson. You pair him with Lorando Hernandez on that line. You got Bryce Hampton. You got Clifton Duck. Joe Fouché, which we'll have to see his injury status as it pertains to this game. But even if Fouché's out of the lineup, the Nighthawk defense is still stacked. Number 1 in offense, number 1 in defense, and now they get to go back home. Scary, scary stuff. My pick for this game, I know it burned me last week, but I think that was a little bit of an overdue scenario. We're hopping right back on the well here. I've got Vegas at the minus 24.5. Do not let recency bias fool you into being the reason to take Tucson plus 24.5. This is still a handful of points. And honestly, not a whole heck of a lot different than the 26.5 that Vegas was laying at Northern Arizona. But the reality of the fact here is that even with that outcome, Vegas has still had games where they've beaten teams by 34, 33. They have a couple wins by 40 points this season, one of which was against this same Tucson team in their barn when the Sugar Skulls had their opening game of the season. So back at home, I see Vegas taking command early. You know that defense is going to want to get right. They've already done so against Jerome Johnson in the past. So makes all the sense to me. Return to the well. Return to a bet that has gone 8-2 so far this season. And let's see if the Nighthawks get back on the ATS wagon with a big win. All right, Sunday night indoor football time. We'll begin with the 4 o'clock afternoon game, third and final of the season series between the San Diego Strike Force and the Northern Arizona Wranglers. This will be the only meeting in Prescott Valley this season. It is here where the Wranglers are favored by, or the Wranglers are not favored, excuse me. It is the Wranglers are underdogs by 10.5 points. The over-under is 89.5. The money line is showing us San Diego minus 535 and Northern Arizona plus 400 in pursuit of their second win of the season. San Diego returns to action following a bye last week, and they remain a very interesting case. They are second currently in the Western Conference, despite a lot of their numbers for the full season returning close to, if not slightly above, league average. On both sides of the ball, offensively and defensively. What has been the difference for the Strike Force this season has been the highs have been very, very high and have been far more frequent than their low points of the season. The turnover problems that plagued them at the beginning of the season have seemed to dissipate close to nothingness, and that's resulted in an absolute surge of scoring for Nate Davis, Tyrell Green, Dallas Daniels, Shane Hooks, and the rest of that Strike Force offense, which very possible they may get Eddie Vander back into that rotation as well after the versatile running back has missed the better part of the past month plus with a nagging injury. So could be a situation where the rich get richer for San Diego. Defensively, they've got guys like Wallace Cravens, Royce C., Elijah Reed, that have been as opportunistic as ever in terms of making teams pay for being a little bit off top form. They did so against Northern Arizona in their previous meeting on May 23rd, getting out to a super quick lead there, and that winding up as a 67-35 victory for San Diego. Northern Arizona is going to rest their hat on the argument of it's tough to beat a team 3 times in the same season. I know we say that argument a lot in the college basketball world, but we could see the same hold true here. The Wranglers are at home, where they have actually covered the spread in each of their last 3 games. And in the case of Anthony Garrett, since he made his debut about a month ago against the Iowa Barnstormers, the Wranglers' games at home have seen this Northern Arizona offense just blossom. It's pretty much been a match made in heaven for Ron James and the Wranglers' offensive staff. Guys like Ben Omayebu, Marlon Cook, Karan Ashley, Marlon Cook, making one big play after another. I think it was Northern Arizona. They've gotten games where they've scored, I believe, 57 and 70 in each of their last 2 at home. So whatever's working within the friendly confines of Findlay Toyota Center, the Wranglers are going to need to rely on that in order to make another bid at a big upset victory. One possible advantage for the Wranglers here is that they've basically spent the past month playing exclusively the class of the Western Conference. So are they finally playing up to that level of competition? Based on their last game against Vegas, the answer might be a resounding yes. So that's a little bit of something to consider too. If they do want to win, though, their defense has to round out to form. They have given up over 57 points, I believe, or 56 points in each of their last 3 games. So you're talking about a team that's got pretty solid guys back there. Traverse Farrell and Davey Agabor are the first that come to mind. But it's going to take a full effort to try to hold teams, especially one as explosive as San Diego, to below that 50-point mark. So we'll see if they're able to put something together. My pick for this game is going to completely tail a streak that we talked about before. San Diego has gone over 4 straight times. Northern Arizona has gone over 4 straight times. I am active on this over at 89.5. I have been super impressed with what Northern Arizona's offense has been able to do in their recent games in this building. Also considering the effect of special teams as well. Ernesto Lacayo, very, very capable of putting through deuces, as is Northern Arizona's kicker, Manny Higuera, who booted through 4 of them in that upset bid against Vegas a week ago. So it stands to reason, the way that arena is structured, no typical scoreboard overhanging at midfield, we could get a touchdown just from 3 deuces, basically. And I think that's a solid argument to hang your hat on. But I love where both offenses are at right now. There's a reason why they're 4-0 to the under each in their last 4 games. So why not 5-0? Why not 5-0? I've got the over for San Diego and Naz. Which brings us to our final game of the week, with the Fishers Freight battling out with the Arizona Rattlers. This is a rematch of a prior matchup in Indiana, which the Freight won 56-42. The bookies are looking for a reversal of the script, though, with Arizona 7.5-point favorites over the Reeling Freight. The over-under is 91.5. Moneyline shows Fishers at plus 270 and Arizona at minus 340. Fishers, I hate to say it, but it's deja vu. Um, a team that was off to an impressive 5-1 start has since lost 5 games in a row, with many of those being heartbreaking losses at the dying moments where maybe one play goes differently, and we're not talking about an extended losing streak. But be that as it may, that's where the Freight are right now. They are now outside of the Eastern playoff picture with a 5-6 record and a tough assignment in front of them to try to halt this streak before it reaches half a dozen. Um, we did get a little bit of a surprise when Fishers played last week with Davis Black starting over Felix Harper. So we're going to have to see if that was a spontaneous decision made by the coaching staff or if Harper takes command for this full game moving forward. Dominic Roberto has been outstanding at running back for the Freight, but what happened to Josiah King? I mean, he had that injury about a month or two ago, but it was clear as day the Freight were far more efficient on offense when they had every part of their three-headed monster between Harper, Roberto, and King active and going full bore. And even though King has played in the past few games, it's taken a little while for him to catch up to game action. Maybe a lot of that has been Roberto has taken the starting role and run with it, but we're going to have to see how Fishers plays that hand out in these final 5-6 games of the season for them. Defensively, they have shown a lot better after a stretch where they gave up, I think it was 57, 60, and it was another high total, 52 or something like that. But they've come back well. They gave up only 36 to a really talented Jacksonville team. They ended up giving up 45 to the Oilers, with much of that damage happening in the first half, holding Tulsa mostly scoreless as part of a second half rally. So the Freight, they haven't been off by much, but they haven't had the breaks go their way late. And that's been the story of their 5-game losing streak. As for the Arizona Rattlers, they are coming back off a bye from last week. The last time that we saw them play, they were in a bit of a dogfight with the Northern Arizona Wranglers in this building, but eventually pulled away with the big second half to the tune of a 56-32 victory. They are 7-3 right now, in third place in that Western Conference, looking at every opportunity that they can get to continue to get wins and leapfrog San Diego, maybe Vegas, to finish as high atop those Western standings as possible. We're going to have to see the decision again. It's going to be at quarterback, whether it's Drew Powell or Max Myler. We've seen Powell start for the majority of games now in this past month, so maybe that's the direction that Kevin Guy takes. But whoever's there between Powell and Myler, the offense is going to be elite. They've got some big-time players like Ron Brown Jr., Kamani Clark, Corey Reed, Keenan Hambrick having an impressive rookie season as well. And perhaps lost in the shuffle, a defense that's right now second in the IFL in defensive efficiency. That young secondary with guys like Karlansky Decius and Yashin McKee have really stepped up, made life easy for some of the vets on that roster. We've got Carson Taylor at that defensive line and linebacker spot coming up with some plays as well, including that I think it was a pick six or a fumble recovery at the Brawl at the Mall. So Arizona shaping up as one of the strongest teams in the league during a season where, you know, those elite teams have really lived up to that name. So they're going to be looking for a positive result here. They're going to be looking for revenge against the Fishers Freight. And my pick for this game, I know it's going to be cursed because what other result have my bets of this type gone through at any point in this series? But Arizona on the money line, minus 340. I'm not a super huge fan of the odds, but again, this falls in the same boat a little bit as our Jacksonville pick a week ago. Our picks on Fishers Freight games are 3 and 8. So I find it worthwhile to eat some juice here, take our medicine, and see if Arizona can defend their home turf. I believe they are undefeated at home on the season, with their only losses coming at Vegas, at Fishers, and in the IFL Cup Championship in New Jersey. Aside from that, everything else has been wins, including some impressive games on the road and some really stellar games at home in front of one of the most passionate and established fan bases in all of indoor football. So I think if Arizona plays true to their game, I don't see why they can't take this by double digits, which makes -7.5 pretty enticing. But given where Fishers, their past few games in this losing streak, they've had losses of 5, by 3, by 2, by 1. Yeah, let's not mess with that 7.5 number for now, and we'll take Arizona outright at home. So that is going to wrap it up for our main game picks. So now we will pivot to our back-to-back 3-leg parlay attempt to see if we can finally get a back-to-back to go. So we are going to open things up here with the New Mexico San Antonio game. I have to bite here. I have to bite on the over at 67.5. This is, like I said before, the lowest implied total in the IFL's betting history. And for as woeful as both of these offenses have been, their per game averages, in terms of you take New Mexico's game averages X per game, San Antonio's average Y per game, both teams are actually above that number fairly comfortably, even though they're the bottom two teams in the IFL in that category as well. San Antonio at 70.4 points per game, and New Mexico 73.4 points per game. This is another scenario, too, where we talk a bunch about the offense, but what about the special teams, too? We could see deuces. We could see kickoff returns create short fields. We could see kickoff returns for touchdowns. We could see big plays defensively that also shut up short fields. In a game that likely is going to feature anywhere between 20 and 22 possessions, I don't think it's an unreasonable ask to call for 10 of those to be touchdowns. Not to mention that we could have 9 touchdowns along with some field goals, deuces, rouges, whatever. I understand why the number is this low. I just have a hard time seeing how that happens. Like the whole San Antonio below 40 thing is going to be there. The entire New Mexico averaging 20 per game on the road is going to be there. But I think, too, with both teams in dire need of a victory, I think we're going to see a version of them at close to their best for this contest. So over 67.5 to lead things off. We will then go later in the evening to Tucson, Vegas, where I will take the over at 88.5. Now, I must concede, this runs directly in contrast with Tucson's current streak of 7 games straight to the under, which I kind of made a little bit of a big deal about on social media midweek. But I think in a situation like this, you have to look at the matchup, and the best thing would be to consider which team is more likely to assert their will. And if you say anybody other than the Vegas Nighthawks, I hate to tell you this, but you must not be watching that much IFL football this season. So we'll talk about Vegas's trend here for a little bit that I believe supersedes the understreak of Tucson. At this number of 88.5, we have seen 8 of Vegas's past 9 games fly by this number, thanks in large part to an offense that very few teams have been able to stop, or at the very least contain to below their average of 57 points per game. If they get there and a rejuvenated Jerome Johnson comes in and picks up the rest of the load, this stands a very reasonable chance. I think we've actually included a Vegas over in each of our past 2 parlay attempts, and they've both cashed. So until that number starts going upwards, I see no reason why we should deviate from it. So over 88.5 is my play there. And the third leg is going to go very, very contrarian here. And I don't know how popular this is going to be. Northern Arizona to cover at plus 10.5 against the San Diego Strike Force. Again, this kind of fades San Diego's road form a little bit, but we've seen them kind of come back to earth in that regard a little bit this season. But really the thing that moves the needle for me with this pick is Northern Arizona's team upside when they are at home. I mentioned in the single game analysis, they have covered in 3 straight games at Prescott Valley. And if the offense keeps doing what they're doing, I mean, I at that point, I don't care who is lined up against them. That is a tough ask to cover as a double-digit road favorite. Again, this falls upon the logic as well of the home underdogs against the spread. We're looking at a 19-7 record overall in that bet type. In Northern Arizona, the way they've played the past few, the way they've kind of built themselves up, why not try for the upset special? I mean, we've seen crazier things happen in this league before, so we'll take the double-digit points here plus the half-point hook, and we will see if this attempt is the long-awaited one, which gives us the back-to-back winners. This is north of plus 600, actually, thanks to the slight discount on Northern Arizona's spread bet at minus 108. But a $10 bet here would pay off $70.19 if you do want to take it. To recap it here before we close things out, we have the over 67.5 New Mexico, San Antonio, the over 88.5 in Tucson, Vegas, and the Wranglers to cover at home as 10.5 point underdogs versus the San Diego Strike Force. Plus 601 if you like it. All righty. Now, before we sign off, I know we have moments to go until the Jacksonville Green Bay kickoff, but I did want to quickly highlight the differences in the odds between DraftKings and Bet365, because the lines over on the right did come out a little bit earlier in the week. But as it turns out, there are a lot of differences that bettors could potentially capitalize on depending on where you're located. I believe in states that have both DraftKings and Bet365 available. I believe North Carolina, Iowa, and Arizona are examples where both books are licensed and legal. There are a lot of opportunities here to potentially lock in guaranteed profit. One of the biggest ones, actually, in terms of an arbitrage opportunity, is the Orlando-Tulsa game. As we can see on DraftKings, Orlando is plus 295, whereas Tulsa is minus 170. So an extreme discrepancy there, to the point where you can actually guarantee yourself a pretty nice sum of profit if you bet a particular way. In this example, I did a little bit of number crunching earlier. $100 on Tucson at minus 170, $40 on Orlando at plus 295. That would actually guarantee a profit of at least $18. So if you happen to have $140 lying around, you could do that strategy and turn that into $18 absolutely risk-free. And if you expound that by a factor of 10, you have, however much money lying around, you can get pretty ridiculous with some of these arbitrage opportunities. The same deal actually goes for Tucson and Vegas, if we see here. Tucson at plus 1,500, Vegas minus 1,000. If you play the numbers a little bit right there, that would be another insane opportunity for some guaranteed profit. So something that I felt in my heart is worth discussing here before we go. It also brings up the valid question moving forward, and maybe this is more of a next year thing, is will I allow myself to odd shop between these two books? So just some short, medium, and long-term thoughts that I had, but hopefully they provide a little bit of insight to you as well. But with that, we will wrap up tonight's episode. We'll put myself back into the full view here. But yeah, we're about 10 minutes away from Green Bay and Jacksonville, so we'll sign things off here. Thank you so much for hopping on again. Really appreciate your time. If you liked the video tonight, be sure to like and subscribe. It'll certainly help the channel out to grab some more exposure, grow the game a little bit. If you're going to be placing bets this week, I wish you the very best of luck. And as always, I will see you at the cashier.